So for today, with our florals, I wanted to continue with focusing on just a few flowers at a time. Like we did last week, we just focused on the structure of flowers and the sketching. Today, I want to focus on watercolor. So to be able to recreate flowers, but not necessarily like very accurate botanicals. The botanical illustrations can be a little daunting because you have to be very accurate with shape, sizes, proportions, and you need to be very comfortable using watercolors, mixing shades together, getting an accurate color palette. So that is something that we can grow to. But before that, there's a larger application of florals in other respects. Most importantly, when you want to make something like cards, since mostly we make anything that we are gifting, we want to make it look attractive, and flowers are the easiest way to just put a few dots and make something look a little more special. So I'm hoping that after today's session, you will be able to apply this to just start making a whole bunch of cards, gift cards, letter cards that you can start sending out people before the holiday season starts and they get it on time. If we have time, we will try to make cards as well. Use one of these flowers that we are going to paint and make a card. So I can teach you a little bit about composition and maybe a quick introduction, not introduction, but a quick lettering lesson as well. So let me share the images. I have chosen just isolated flowers instead of using bouquets or flowers in fields, because many of those things can land up distracting from the main structure of the flower, the colors. This way we can just focus on the few shades that we need to make that one flower. But more importantly, I also would like to introduce you to the idea of brush manipulation when you are painting. That which you can achieve in 10 strokes, you can achieve in one if you get comfortable with brush manipulation. At every point, we need to also recognize that while we are attempting to make a flower as accurately as possible with watercolor, it's more about the effervescence of the watercolor that we want to communicate. So don't be too concerned if your shapes are a little odd, their proportions are a little off, but we have to keep the colors light and easy and fresh. And sometimes we can also change up a little bit to make the watercolor part of the illustrations stand out more. Many of these flowers are not typical Indian tropical flowers. I try really hard, but the only flowers that I land up making pretty okay are bougainvillea. We have we have some very beautiful flowers, and at some point I will also teach you those. But there is a certain simple aesthetic in that we are familiar with all these other flowers that I want to capitalize on. And then maybe we can adapt the same kind of styling for Indian flowers. Now, this is a magnolia. The structure, I'm going to show you how to draw it. Like we haven't done a rose last week. So I'll show you how we draw flowers like magnolia, even lotus or roses, where you often don't see the flower from the front. You'll often always see it from the side. And it's got a complex structure of petals, which can be a little scary because you don't know where to begin and then also how to proceed. But if you have flowers like a pansy where everything is pretty easy, here because it's asymmetrical, it can take some getting used to. Poppies are also pretty much like that magnolia, where if you know how to structure it, you will be able to draw it much better. So let's
Is
start
this
off.
is
Yeah.
this a like a photograph, or is it actually a watercolor?
No, all these are photographs. I try to not use,
Oh,
I try to not use watercolors to make watercolor, because then you often feel pressured to reproduce it in exactly the same manner.
mm,
And because watercolor is so temperamental, what you do with your hand will differ from what other people might do. And what you do will independently also look good if you don't compare it to an end
mm.
result. So, as strange as it seems, I've always recommended drawing from real photographs and be happy with, because it's going to be a translation. So it's going to look good regardless.
Well, either ways, that photograph is really good.
It is, yeah.
The poppy, yeah. Hmm.
Okay, so let's start off with, I'll show you how to create the structure of the magnolia. It's not going to be as detailed as we created the pencil sketch last week, because we are going to paint over it. So you don't want to have too much pencil work on it. Your colors might get very dull. We will be using a little bit of the eraser to lighten the lines before we start coloring. And as always, if there are some lines that you cannot make before putting down one color, you draw in stages. First, you will draw a main part and then you will draw the rest. So wherever that's applicable, I will tell you that as well. In most cases, when we start drawing, we will create one shape or an overall size to proportion of a flower, and then begin drawing from there. In the case of flowers like, let's call them like a closed bud flower, like roses or magnolia or poppies, I prefer a different style of illustrating. Often in these cases, let me share again because it'll become better if I show you the picture than talk. In a flower like this, there will, most petals are overlapped by another petal. But there will be at least one petal which will not be overlapped, which can be a starting point. In the case of the flower on top, we have this petal which is extending into the foreground. It's slightly foreshortened, but forms an interesting base. In the case of the flower below, we can use this petal to structure, though there is an overlap. There are no other petals that I can see I can use, because everything will be half a line and then there will be another overlap. The other option could be to use this closed petal, because there are fewer things that are overlapping it. I'm going to start with the flower on top. Once you identify what you are drawing, then it just comes down to looking at the shape and looking at angles, direction, distance, and the form of that line, and draw one line at a time. So in this case, I can draw a line that is going in a curved manner in one particular direction. Now, the moment I draw this line, this becomes like my unit size. Then I will continue with just looking at the next line and looking at its structure, that the line starts off, let's say, somewhere in the middle towards 1 o'clock, and the distance is maybe about 1/4 or one 2/3 or 1/3 of the distance away from this original point. So this distance away from the center point, I will be able to draw the next line. This is the most objective way of figuring out how to draw shapes. There's nothing else to give you any orientation. So you draw one line, the first line that you see, and break it up into half, one third, two third, one quarter, half, three quarters, and use those as unit sizes. And then the directions that we have on the clock face. So this goes going up towards 1 o'clock, turning around all the way, and then coming down and joining at an angle that is pointing towards, say, 4 o'clock. So this, it might take a little while for you to get used to this kind of analysis in your head at all times. But you don't really have to keep saying this. You will start seeing it. Once you draw the lines on top, then using that, you can say, okay, at halfway point, I have one line that goes up, and it goes up just a little more than the first petal I have drawn, turns back into itself, makes a little dimple on the inside, and then comes straight down. Now, here are the things that we sometimes don't see. In our heads, we might see this as a very round petal, and that's where sizes and shapes start changing. So at every point that you're drawing an extension of a line, keep checking. The moment the line turns, is it going straight down or is it curving, and to what degree it is curving? So this is a very slow process, but believe me, this will really help you to see only the lines and shapes and not the flower. Once you finish all the lines that have to be drawn, what you will end up with is the flower that you want. It's almost like magic. Okay, so let's start doing this. Keeping in mind the size of the flower, look at it in proportion, and you'll notice that the first petal you're making has to be about maybe a very thin sliver at the base of the flower, and beyond that it's going to bloom out. So if you make your first petal somewhere over here and it's going to be this large, everything else is going to blow up in proportion, so it's going to be really big. I recommend always starting at least 2 or 3 fingers inside, visualizing your flower in the central area rather than along the periphery. When you make your lines also, avoid making them as absolute lines like that. You can make the line in a broken form. Now let me remove the first line. Hold your pencil sufficiently far away and be prepared to make adjustments. Once you put a shape down, evaluate it. It is just a pencil line, so you can always make adjustments. So sometimes I feel that making a pencil sketch or actually finishing any picture is like they say, no, hindsight is 2020. It becomes hindsight once you finish the picture. If you do not commit to that line, it is almost as if that experience has not happened and you don't know what might have transpired or whether it was a good thing to do it or not. So don't second guess in the beginning. Draw the line and then evaluate. The same principle can work for drawing absolutely anything you want to draw, whether it's objects, whether it's faces, people, animals, because every part of every object is something that a line can recreate, and each line in conjunction with other lines is what an object is made of. In many places, you might find some confusing data, but try to not overanalyze it. Try to not analyze it at all. Just draw what you see. In this case, allowing your brain to interfere to analyze something is a trap. Since our brains are designed for analysis, they are more than eager to give you more information. But that information may not be what you want when you are illustrating. Whenever you're drawing flowers, also try to draw some kind of stalk. Most flowers look prettier when there is a stalk or a bud, its own stalk or bud to support its structure. Even those structures are worth studying. Okay, how's everyone doing? Okay, are you happy with the structure of your flowers?
No.
No. Can I help you?
Looks beyond help. But yes, I'm making corrections.
I am
Redrawing some parts.
I'm waiting for a challenge like that, something that is beyond correction. There's always something you can fix.
Till you see my drawing.
Let me have it.
Let's see, I don't think I got the proportions right. Let's see.
Okay, let me check it. Oh no, it's too light. Would you mind sharing it on the group so I can study it?
Yeah. Yes.
Let's see, Janita's. Okay, just share it on the group. Yeah.
Yeah, it's too light. I'll share.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Janita, I think your flower has too many. I don't know if the petals have that much going for them. Oh, sorry, where did I go? The edges are much smoother than you've made. So I think you are somewhere you are trying to recreate this part in this part, in these lines. So here you have a little bit of a fringe for the petals, but not on these sides. These are very smooth lines. Okay, this is Rohit's. Yeah, it's just a matter of proportion, Rohit. Here, the petal that you've drawn over here, you have gone and attached it like this. You have got this fine. This petal is okay. We can work with that. This is okay. This is fine. These can be this can be slightly higher. Right now, it's at this edge. And this is also, see the angle that these make with each other. So this petal can go a little higher as well. Now here's something that I notice often is there's something about us that makes us want to connect things the way they are. So if you've drawn one petal like that, and we have the other petals. I'm just in a way paraphrasing. There's something about wanting to finish a line at a given edge. We'll end up doing this, whereas in reality, maybe it is like that. So you don't have this line, but it seems to happen this way. Similarly, when we have drawn a petal over here, for some reason, it feels better to match in height than to have one higher or one lower. So this is just something that you watch out for. If you land up or you see that you have a tendency to do that, it's just probably one way in which you want to not leave negative spaces. It's so when you bring the line down, you're not looking at whether you have a negative space, whether it joins slightly inside or slightly outside. So you just need to keep yourself a little wary. And when it comes to other petals, this is in fact a good way to assess heights of or distances and lengths. How much taller is the next petal compared to the earlier petal that I've drawn, or vice versa? How much shorter is this petal compared to the earlier petal I have drawn? That becomes a question then you ask to yourself. In terms of the overall shape, so after you have finished the whole thing, if you notice your flower is looking a little flattened, and that flatness is coming from just one place, I think, that the angle of your lower petal is too flat. If you can round it up a little bit and bring it lower, take this petal and bring it inside, instantly your flower would look better. It's just that, just a few shapes. This has to go higher. This has to go higher. This becomes rounder and comes in, and this becomes rounder and goes downward. It won't look like a box. The lower flower is looking much better than the one on the top.
Yeah.
Okay. Elaine, you've made just the lower flower, right?
Yes, sorry, I started off with that one. So
No problem. All right. Now, in your case, Elaine, when you're making a line that is not coming properly, like
yes,
the lower petal,
yeah,
what has happened currently is you try to draw this line, and
yeah,
you draw one, it looks too flat. Then you draw
Yes.
another one, and then you keep
Yeah.
drawing this.
yeah,
You
yeah.
get me? This is perfectly okay. But at one point, just use an eraser in the parts where you are unhappy,
Okay,
and then you will still have a guideline.
right.
At this point, you can rotate to the most comfortable angle to
Okay,
recreate parts of that petal.
okay.
And if you see yourself struggling so much for a petal, I think then just evaluate, is a petal worth all that pain? Maybe it's not. So your first shape, if it is not perfect, but it is still passable, go with that.
Okay, right.
Now here, using a flexible eraser really helps, because you can just roll over the lines and lighten them a little bit. If you have one of those non-flexible, regular stiff erasers, don't rub flat, just bounce the eraser on top of only the lines so that you don't disturb the paper too much. With things like florals, you want to leave the paper surface as abrased as possible. Now remember, we are not making a perfect botanically accurate image. We want the colors to look very nice and vibrant. So in this case, we can use a lot of wet on wet. We are going to be painting a base color. We're going to be dropping colors in a few key places, but they're going to spread to neighboring petals. So it's just going to look like a puddle in which we have dropped in paint. Once that dries up completely, we are going to take a slightly darker color, and then we are going to make some lines with brush manipulation to create depth. The colors are not going to be accurate in terms of highlight and depth like the reference image. Don't aim for that, but it will still look like a vibrant three-dimensional magnolia. So if you don't mind, let me make the first wash fully before you start painting. Don't be in a rush to paint. I would rather you observe my brush strokes and then start doing yours. With many things in art, observation is also part learning. I found that very often with at least calligraphy, sometimes even with painting, you absorb certain things about that craft without doing it. So that when you start doing it, simple things like how a brush is held, how the strokes are made, are something that through observation you learn to do from day one. So let's try to do that. Don't be in a rush to paint. This is not like school, first in class. It does not mean you're going to win anything special or whatever. Okay, so few things to remember are shade of color and consistency. I am using a very, very thin, watery consistency. And whenever painting flowers, I generally mix more than one shade. This flower could very well be painted in just crimson because it's a nice bright pink. But the first wash, I want to add some warmth to it. So I'm adding orange to it. Orange and crimson make for a very vibrant red. So a very watery orange. And again, please remember when you are mixing colors, instead of making one big puddle, you have one puddle which has a different concentration of colors or combination, and another one which can have a different shade. And very often these two will mix. That is intended. They will mix in different parts of the flower. As you take more and more paint, the application will also change. That will look good. So I'm now going to use this paint, a well-loaded brush, and I'm just going to stain this entire flower with this color. When you are creating any kind of wash at any time, you should remember to load the brush before it becomes too dry. We want our flower to be reasonably wet because we have to dump in another color. In some places, there will be some puddles of color. In some places where you press the brush, it will not be that dark. Janita, observe, don't paint, don't paint.
No, not painting. I just made the wash.
No, don't do it right now. You'll get the time. I'm telling you, this is a very bad habit. I have to tell this in school also all the time. There are some things that you see, you will not be seeing, and then you'll wonder what happened. And I wouldn't know at what stage you've not seen. Okay, so now this is very wet. You can see that the color is quite wet. There is a little dampness here, but here it is very wet. Wherever it is damp, I can drop in a few shades. This is just an extra crimson. We don't have to do this too fast. I am dropping this only in the areas where I see a little dark color. Now, in the time that I've taken to paint or put in the second color, since this has not dried, I'm taking a damp brush and I'm lifting the color just with capillary action. Don't press too hard. And after 2-3 strokes, wipe the brush, go back in and lift. And then you can add more color. If you have very light, so if there's too much water, the color is just going to disappear everywhere. So you need to optimize that. So I'd rather that you paint the second color when the paint is a little more damp than less, because if it is less, then this is what's going to happen. And then don't do too much musty around here. Let this whole equation do whatever it is doing. There's a very subtle color difference between those colors, and we are fine with that. Okay, do you want to try this now? Now, okay, but before you start painting, just see, I can barely see the lines of my flower. So if you have erased too much, there is a chance after 2 layers of painting that you might not be able to see the lines. So a few places, if you want to make the lines a little darker, please go ahead and do that before you put the paint down. Okay, you want to try?
So just so that I remember what you actually said. So first, totally wet, wet the paper with water, then take crimson, and then wet it on the wet, and then you added a few drops at some spots. Did you lift color after that?
No.
Okay.
Because we are working on 130 GSM, there's no need to wet the paper with water first. The first layer itself is a stain, but it is very light and it's very watery. So I pressed the brush down and I just stained the paper while I was wetting it. And then in some places where there was excess paint, I wiped my brush, didn't wash it, removed excess paint, and then lifted the paint. But where it was as damp as I needed it, I took a little extra crimson onto this corner, see? So that it is still a runny color, but it is not as devoid of pigment. And then, okay, here is an exaggeration. Then I add that in some places. So you just have to touch the paper. The liquid on the surface will pull in the second paint that you're dropping, the wet on wet. Here, please don't try to manipulate the color to go in one direction or another. Let it just do its thing. Okay, I'm going to do a third drop. Let me see. Yeah. Okay, I want you to just see this also. Just in some places, it's still damp. So I'm making more color drops. Some places it has dried up. So you'll see these strokes. This is what we want, and this is what we want to avoid. But if you do get strokes like these, where you've tried to put in color and part of the stroke gets absorbed, part doesn't, don't manipulate this, leave it be. We can integrate it back into our painting. In the kids class, I have two batches. The 415 batch, there is a girl who's extremely eager to paint like that. Her name is Alia. And literally, I have to keep telling Alia, keep your pencil down, look at the screen. She is just like, I want to do it, I want to do it. In the in-person class, I have Chris, who is also extremely eager to paint. They just think that listening to the theory, they'll be able to do it. So I think this is a personality type. And Janita, you're not the only one. And I have a feeling maybe even I have been that. Just let me at it. I don't want any more instructions. I just want to paint. So stop yapping and let's just get on with it. All right. So if you're done with this, and if you, we need to let this dry a little bit. 1 second. Huh? Sorry, I had to take that call. My younger one is ill in college, so I'm panicking a little bit because she told me yesterday the doctor over there said it could be dengue or typhoid. I almost fell off my chair, but she's fine. She's fine.
Dengue is going around even in Bangalore. It's pretty bad.
I'm sure it's all the same everywhere. Okay, so before Elaine and Neeta leave, I just wanted to show you one easy way of making some flowers using brush manipulation. So the third flower that we have is, I think it's called a protea. And this has a very nice structure to practice brush manipulation with. Brush manipulation is only is just making strokes by using brushes. I'm sure you must have come across many such paintings. So it's not going to be new, but I just want to show you the technique because this helps you make some flowers very quickly without having to use pencil at all. So here we just study the structure of the brush, of the petals, and we make strokes, just single strokes to recreate the structure and keep developing that as we go down. And as we go down the stalk, we keep changing the color so that we get this effect. So needless to say, we have to create all colors that we need to dip into beforehand. I will be using crimson, scarlet, orange at the top, then moving down to maybe even cobalt blue before we come down into sap green. So that's crimson, scarlet, orange, cobalt blue over here and coming down to sap green. So here's how we'll do it. In one palette, you have crimson, you can have scarlet, and have them next to each other. It's okay if they mingle. It's not a big deal. And you have orange. We have cobalt blue going here already, so I'll just add into that. And here I will add sap green. Although I do have a nice blue-green color also, I generally prefer that to pure sap green. But after moving through cobalt, my green is going to become blue-green. All right. Now, brush manipulation can create different kinds of strokes. Firstly, I'm going to use a number 10 brush for this. And I want you to just see how I wield the brush. Normally, our brush can make lines and we paint using the bristles. So you'll have lines like that. You can have thinner lines. And then we do this back and forth thing to create painting. But the brush can do a lot more. It can bend. So you can create lines which have more character. This is brush manipulation. And you can make all sorts of lines with that. You can make crescents. You can make little teardrop shapes. You can make vertical teardrop shapes like what we're going to do now. So the point that we, or the technique that we're going to do is just to press the brush down and flatten it so that the round part of your brush makes that round edge. And then as you drag it down, start lifting the brush so that you can get a nice point at the base. And this can be made in all directions. So you can do it like this and then pull the brush slightly towards the left. So you can join these. You can do the same, pull the brush slightly towards the right, and you have petals on the other side. If you do it slowly enough, all this will happen easily. If you do it too fast, you might get a fishtail, you might get an odd shape. And the reason you do it slow is because the time that it takes for the color to leave the brush and be absorbed by the paper and then spread out nicely, that little a few microseconds or a second is what will give you the right shapes and this kind of nice deep color at the top, light color in the middle, and then deep color at the bottom, or any combination of these. Now, the structure of the flower is very simple. We just need to keep making these shapes in different colors at different places. You don't have to go in completely blind. You can make a stalk. Don't make it too big, just a nice curved line about so much. And starting off with a mix of orange and scarlet. Start in the center and start making these petals coming towards that center line. Move from scarlet to crimson and also in between. And also from a little further away if you want to. They don't have to be symmetrical shapes. Any kind of overlap is fine. When you're moving from scarlet to cobalt, you can start making this come downward. And then from there to sap green. So the structure is that you have a V shape and then you have one leaf that comes in the foreground, but we can make that in the end. And after all these are done, then you can take a slightly deeper color or maybe mix some colors also. Make sure everything has dried and make a few interesting shapes overlapping. They don't have to end in the same point. So it starts thickening up. And then eventually, with a thinner brush, in crimson or scarlet, you can make this top, the original line that we had made. So at this point, again, here's a second row of brush manipulation you can choose to do to make some petals stand out. Just a small stroke along the edge of a few petals in the foreground, or just a small section of the petals. In this case, you can also mix colors. You put a little bit of that crimson on top of some of these petals, as is in the reference image. So all the strokes that we are making can be made using the same technique. Press down, pull up, press down, pull up. Now, since this is not a wash related flower, you can make them as dark or as light as you want to. You can go very pastel. Like this as well. Or you can make them very deep.
Just remind me of the rose milling that we had
Yeah.
in Norway.
True.
Very much like that. Very pretty.
Okay. Coming back to our magnolia. After you've done this, you will be much more comfortable to make the next strokes that are required even in the magnolia. Same shades.
My magnolias again a little, you know what usually happens where all the paint collects along the edge?
Ah, you've got clouds.
Yes.
Yeah, don't worry, even I have clouds. It's fine.
Your
Okay.
clouds seem more aesthetic than my clouds for sure.
Ah. Okay, now I'm doing the same thing over here, but now in the shape of the petal that we've drawn. So wherever you lift the brush, there will be a little bit of excess paint. Let that be. That will give us the shadow. Now, at some point, if you feel you need to add more depth to this, you can use a color like even burnt umber mixed with crimson, but a little bit of a blue, like ultramarine blue, to make it slightly deeper. And then using a thinner brush, even thinner than this would do, I think, and thicker paint, you can adjust this. Oh, where is my thin brush? And at any point when you are making these extra color strokes, don't go over the entire area that you painted, the earlier strokes. Paint something else or paint something less. So the strokes that remain visible, they are because of the nature of watercolor itself. So if you resist the temptation of correcting them, that'll make your flowers look prettier. The remaining should be easy to make because it's just colors. And because we have little yellow ochre like stripes, I would first give a yellow ochre wash on these. And in the same way, maybe a burnt umber color drop, at least along one edge. So for flowers and actually for most watercolor, you have to look at opportunities to drop wet on wet shades. And creating shades with unpredictable colors. And I want to make these a little darker, so I am adding ultramarine blue. I'm not adding black. And I continue to drop color on color while it's wet to create depth. In a few places, I'm going to leave the burnt umber untouched. In some places, I'm going over the burnt umber because I'm going to use the depth of that color to give me dimension.
Aditi, I'll leave now.
Okay.
Finish my messy magnolia sometime. Extremely messy. I mean, my wet wash, these wet on wet is a disastrous every time. So there's something I'm really doing wrong, but we'll do it. I'll do this whole thing again because I'll just show you how messy it is. At the moment, it doesn't seem as if I can even repair it. But see,
don't bother repairing that right now.
No, I'm not. I'll just do another one.
Let me just spin it and have a look. Huh? Yeah. No, yeah, I'll think about what can
it's just looking even better because it's far away. When it's close by, it's really bad.
But you know what? I think, Elaine, there's a chance that one, your color dried before you added the wet on wet in some instances.
Okay.
And but you added it anyway, and then either you try to manipulate it or try to add water after it. But remember, if that is the case, like I had kept my strokes over here. No, I didn't try to blend them or add more water at that point because part of the flower was already wet.
Right.
So if you feel that it's not drying evenly, there are other ways you go about it. Wait till the whole first layer dries. Then take a little bit of pigment and hydrate the entire layer one more time.
Okay.
Or because by then you will be ready to put the second color. So you do that whole hydration and then you drop in the color.
Okay.
So if it is partly hydrated and you're dropping in color, there will be patches. After you painted it, if you still see patches, don't bother with let those patches be. At any point, you can add more pigment and take away, or at least like in this case, color has just gone and merged in subsequent layers. So you can always do that.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
All right. Okay. So I will be doing some simpler flowers also. So watch the video afterwards and see if you can do something.
Thank you, Aditi.
I'll do that. Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Bye, Lane. Bye, Nita.
Bye. Bye.
I have this brush. I wanted to know what you use it for.
Let me see. What is this brush?
Is it, wait, let me put a backdrop. Maybe. Is it visible?
Is it bristles or is it solid brush?
It's just written art paintbrush. It's a Uhu brand, and its shape is very.
But it has hairs, right? That's still hair.
Yes.
Yeah, you can use that to do some brush manipulation. You know, there are some videos I have seen of brushes of weird shapes that you can do hajar things with.
Yeah, it's very flat, sort of.
Yeah, so this will work like a flat brush also with advantages. A flat brush, I have a flat brush, I'll show you this flat brush. It's not like the one that you have.
It's like part round, part flat. It's something in between.
Yeah. Okay, this is one flat brush that I have. It's not round, it is fully flat. It's not like yours is round over here, but then it's cut with an edge. With flat brushes, you can also do a lot of brush manipulation. So you can make maybe leaves like that. So people who are often, or those who are interested in folk art, I think would be able to use this brush. although the folk artists themselves might be using brushes like ours, normal round brushes, this helps beginners to draw certain strokes. Also, sometimes maybe the brush is wide enough to fill two colors. So you get a red and green or something like that. But I think YouTube will have the best information about this. Okay, now, if you want to, we can just do an exercise in color drop using the pansy for structure, just so that we get more flowers done. This is the pansy. And I love this kind of layout where you have some flowers that are larger. They're obviously in close-up, and some flowers that are smaller, but they have more elements. They have more leaves, a stalk even. So, and some, of course, at medium size. This composition looks very nice if you want to fill up a large area, but you still want to make it look interesting. So if you take the central flower, if you want to, I'm just going to simplify the structure. In the center, we can start off with an inverted V shape. And then from there, you can draw, I guess, at end of the V's, you can draw two lines going in the respective o'clock decisions. So you would have one going towards 8, one going towards 5. And you will join them in a frilly edge, or even you can make a roundish edge. So like half a C shape from this side, half a C shape from the other side, and then an inverted short or shallow inverted V on that part. All the sizing or proportioning would be like how we did before. How far do I go and how round do I go? Draw the line and then compare. Then you have another V shape. This is not an exact upright V shape. Here again, you have a C shape coming all the way to this side and a mirror image coming and joining up here, not anywhere lower. Then from the left arm of the V, you have one inverted U shape coming in. There's obviously a foreshortened shape, almost an oval. And from behind there, you have a slightly circular petal. Now, to understand the proportion of this, you can use any method. You can reason that if I keep this in the center, the distance between this and this and this is of so-and-so proportion. Don't try to fit in a proportion. If I were to draw lines from the center all the way outside to an imagined circle, how well does everything fit in that circle? What is the orientation? So in last week's classes, I have tackled drawing of pansies, and I'll share that on the group also, where we've drawn external circle, internal circle, and a very complex structure. But for now, I don't want to get into that. I just want you to be able to make a happy looking pansy repeatedly so that we can practice all sorts of color drops. Okay, let's start with a short inverted V shape. And from the edges of the V, a line goes towards 8 o'clock. Okay, that's going towards 9. 8 o'clock, 5 o'clock. Coming down lower. At every point, keep looking at the reference image and isolate only the petal that you're drawing in your vision, nothing else. Then we have a V that's slightly larger. And then you have a C shape coming from the other side. A little frill and an inverted mirror image of the sea. Then the petal going on top doesn't emerge from here. In fact, it's coming more or less from the center. I didn't see that earlier. And an oval shape. And then a starting point here, ending point here, and between them, I'm going to draw almost a circular shape petal. This is good enough. Now we need to make these short vertical lines to keep the center part of the flower without color. And even it's yellow here, but leave it without color. And again, instead of drawing a line like that to indicate the boundary of your color drop, draw these vertical lines or lines. By vertical, I mean the lines that are perpendicular to the edge of that shape. Since color is not really what we are aiming for today, whatever colors we have ready, you can use a combination of those. So an orange and scarlet color or orange and crimson color as the base. And then drop in ultramarine blue or crimson if you're using orange like that. You can do those. But now I'm going to encourage you to do one petal at a time, not all like we did in this case. Just in the beginning, so you feel like you are in control of things. The results on all petals are going to vary. Don't worry about that. I'm again making a much liquefied color and a little away from where I have marked, it has to be white. I start making vertical strokes. So automatically I get some white strokes in. And I'll paint close to the edge because there seems to be a white edge. Pull the color outward. Now assess and drop in. I'm going to drop in this purple color. It needs to be a little more hydrated. And I'm going to drop it again from the center, pulling backward into the petal. In places where the color has dried, I'll get strokes, I'll just leave it. And the other places, I'm going to make lines in some places, in some places just going to drop. Knowing that the color will spread any case, you don't need to come all the way to the outer edge of that section. It will automatically fill that space up. If your colors are not looking identical on the two petals on the sides, let that be, huh? Don't worry about that too much.
There should be a gap between the petals.
There is
Right.
a gap, yeah. So gap is only for the color. All three petals, my colors are looking different, but it's okay. Are you getting this? Are the color drops coming okay now? Ah, nice. Very nice, Vanita.
You're making small gift tags. So what sort of, how do you compose it? Like, is there a particular way that you'll think of aligning or designing?
Gift tags or gift cards?
Gift tags. Gift tags.
Okay.
Very tiny.
Yeah. So you can do something similar. I'll try and make a gift tag. So this is an A5 size card, but I'll just tear it up into some more shapes. Normally, when you make gift tags, you would make a one end shadow. So this is about how many, an inch and a half or so, and you would probably cut it up like so. Okay, would you make something like this? And you would either write the name or I guess happy season's greetings or whatever. So one is that if you're going to make small tags, you mark the tags, but you make all the florals along the edge, like a bleed design. So you don't do one flower at a time. So in this case, I'll make a quick floral along the edge. Suppose we take on the same pansy structure. Often colors like this. So this over, as it dries, I'll be able to make these into cards. So it's easier to paint on larger areas. If you're doing something smaller, and also depends on what else you're going to write over here, you could paint a smaller version of this, or you could just do like a tiny, any kind of composition that you do can be just one flower on the center or the sides, or one flower over here. So that leaves this area to paint. But often what I recommend is tie up whatever you're going to do, gift, and see how much space you have after the ribbon or the thread has been tied up. If you tie a ribbon over here and your graphic is going to be over here, then it's not going to be visible. So don't do a very busy motif like along the border or anything. It's too tacky. You can do just a simple floral motif like that. Again, use brush manipulation to make these flowers. I'm sure we must have made these in some class earlier. Make one big flower, make 2 or 3 smaller flowers at different distances. Drop in color. And always use a secondary shade. A green is very predictable. So maybe even a blue is fine. Blue or blue-green. And embellish this further with leaves. Just like this. And that should do it. So just along the edges is fine. And here now this has dried up. can add a few leaves to this. In this case, now I can also add, this is what I was going to show you later on. You can add a deeper color. When you're making gift tags and all, don't worry too much about detailing these flowers. They don't really need it. You should give yourself a time budget of maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes at best if you're going to do more. And with these designs, if you have additional parts sticking out from other flowers, that still works. That's still fine. Does this help you, Janita?
Yeah, it's really nice.
Okay, now coming back to these flowers, the pansies. We still have an opportunity to create more detailing. Many of these flowers will have additional lines. So using a nice fine brush, you can recreate those lines. Just look at the internal structure. They're usually radiating, the longest lines being in the center. It's often the same color. Then you have, after you've made those lines, sometimes you also have an additional shade or shadowing right at the base of those lines. So remember to make these lines radiating outward. Direction of the line, angle, distance, it's the same considerations every time. And because of this wonderful ability of watercolor to dry much lighter than it goes in, very often you'll notice that the fact that your shades have looked different at different points will not even matter, and all of it works together. Sometimes you also have a dark color on these, but in a smaller area. The color variations of pansies are so many. They are really a fun flower to paint. And then of course, because the center looks very blank, you can put in a little bit of lemon yellow mixed with green right in the center. And then a little bit of gamboge just along the edge. So the flower does not look like it doesn't have a proper center. Okay, any questions? Any difficulties?
Ma'am, can you just show me that brush manipulation again only once, where you could make the teardrop?
Yes. You can make teardrops in both directions. From like an inverted teardrop can be made. You take your round brush and keep it flat. And then as you pull it downward, keep changing the angle of the brush so that it comes upright.
Okay. This, my left straight one comes better. Left hand side also comes better. My right hand side is, I'm not able to get that. It comes in.
It's
odd
just
shape.
practice. Yeah. And the other one also you can do it, but sometimes the brush acts a little funny. So you come thin and then press down, and right there, after you've pressed, you take it up so that you get a bottom heavy teardrop, both ways. In both cases, I'm pulling it down. So what typically happens is that one side is more comfortable. If you're drawing with your right hand, these maybe the left hand curves are better, but then the right-handed curve can be a little difficult because you feel you have to take your hand in the opposite direction. But it'll come with practice. What you can also do is tilt your book whenever you have to make that. So it's more or less straight, but the last part is tilting towards the left a little bit, and so on.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right. So next week, I've been requested by another class to do floral arrangement. So we'll take it up next week because there's a chance that it might bleed into the week after that. If we're not able to complete everything, it might go into the next week. So I want to give it enough time. And I think this month, your class, I think, has got an extra class. That's the 31st. 31st of October. So we might be able to do some extra class. I am traveling to Mahabeshwar on the 31st, but I intend to carry my equipment because I have derived more joy from doing art outside of my studio. So I'm not going to give up on that opportunity. But since we have an extra class and this is just before Diwali, maybe if you want to do something gifting related and floral related, just start making a list of stuff, putting it on the group, share some pictures. So maybe on the 31st, we can do some of that. Okay. All right. All right. Share your pictures on the group. And I'll see you next week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.